Ashley Rothstein, welcome to the show. I did the name perfect, right? I just
You
want to
did.
be clear. Yes, because
You
I
get
was,
bonus points. Not a lot
yeah.
of people do.
Well, it's very important. I think that if you have a name that people just assume is going to be pronounced one way, you want them to get it right.
Well, there's not usually not even a lot of effort ever. It's just Rothstein. I mean, some people get the Stein, but they miss the sh.
Yeah,
Like my
yeah.
husband loves the sh to pronounce the Rothstein.
Yeah,
Just
I would have missed the sh even if I got the Stein. I'm just going to admit that, and even I just would have done it. And I have several Rothstein friends, so I mean, I can't feel too bad about it. But thanks so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you.
yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. I took a lot of notes over the weekend, kind of diving into my inner world, my creativity, my mind, and curious to see where this goes. Our
Yeah,
last little pre-call was pretty lengthy, so we'll see what comes up here.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was fun though. I think that if you don't do a pre-call, then you're a little just coming in a little cold. So at least we're coming in warm.
Well, ooh, there's my doggy. Hi, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny when you sent out the email for the pre-call, part of my ego was like, oh, I do podcasts. I could
Yeah.
just go for it and do the call, like whatever. But then I was like, no. And then look, we had technology issues last time. So
Yeah, yeah. I did.
sadly,
Yeah, pre-call for me is half technology, half like let's just get to know each other. Some people I know well enough, and I'm not worried, but you never know. So,
you never know.
why don't we start with your background, your general background, where you grew up, and then we'll get into your creative background because I think that's where we'll spend a lot of our time.
Sure. So, I mean, if you don't mind, actually, how I grew up, where I grew up, and my moves, they actually kind of intertwine with the creativity.
Yeah,
So if
perfect.
you don't mind, we can just kind of go for the full Monty. Hold on
Yeah,
one
that
sec there,
sounds
babe.
great.
Go. I'm sorry. You're distracting me right now. Can you sit? Sit. Sit. Down.
I think the
Okay.
listeners might think you're talking to me.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's
very
my dog.
confusing. Yeah.
It's my dog. Just for those listening. So my background, I grew up in Hayward. I was born in Hayward. I went to private
That's
school.
in Cali for the non-Cali people.
Yes, thank you. You know, you got, like I told you, this is the first time I've been on the other end of this. So I
Nobody
never,
outside of California knows that Hayward as a town exists. I know it because I lived in LA for 4 years and I go there all the time. But yeah,
this
okay.
is
So
perfect.
where
Podcast
is?
guest 101. So
Yeah,
I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, California. And I grew up in Hayward, so in California. And I went to private school for most of my youth. My dad, when I was growing up, you know, I was really young, and I don't know if you remember Hooked on
of
Phonics, you
course I
know, the
remember
course
Hooked on
Hooked on
Phonics.
Phonics.
Yeah,
So I started to read at a pretty young age, and my dad would work on Hooked on Phonics with me, and I was just absorbing it so well,
mm.
so quick that he was like, holy crap, like this kid's learning so fast. Like what else can she learn? She's a sponge. So, you know, he started teaching me math. I learned cursive writing. I learned the presidents. I learned the capitals of every state and country in the entire world. And
This
this
is
was
this all at like 3 months or
no, this is more like 3, 4, 5 years old.
yeah.
So going into kindergarten, I had learned cursive. Like I was just learning. But the interesting reflection of my childhood is that almost everything was based on memorization. So
Mm.
with black and white thinking, it was, can you regurgitate this? Can you learn a spelling word? Can you learn the capitals? It was such rigid thinking. And
Yeah,
I,
well, I mean, hooked on phonics is a specific way of reading, and oftentimes when kids learn that when they were young, and then they go to school, it's very confusing because they don't read the same way. Like if doesn't it did it use colors or I've seen reading systems in Montessori that use colors, and then when the kids would transfer out of the school, the colors weren't there, and it just became harder to get the same rhythm.
you know, I don't consciously remember exactly what the program entailed, but I just remember there was a rapid period of learning when I was really young, and it just all had to do with memorization, logic, very black and white thinking. It's like, can you learn the answer beforehand, and then can you be tested on it? And
Right.
so that carried me through grade school. I was advanced, you know, grade levels ahead in math. I skipped second grade. I was always advanced, but my childhood was really intense in the sense that there was a lot of work and no play.
Mm.
And I never really, in reflection of my childhood, I never really tapped into my creative side. I carried the narrative that I was not a creative at all through my entire life. Through high school, I was just the math person. I was the science person. I was just the person that could study for a test and then take a test and get the right answers. And there's one story I actually wrote down that I wanted to talk about here because it paints such a good picture of the way that my brain was structured. In college, I was in a speech class, and every speech you could prepare for, you had a topic and you wrote your speech and then you gave it to the class. Well, for our final, it was an impromptu speech. And that scared the shit out of me because that means that you have to talk from your gut, right? You have to talk spontaneously. So what our teacher did was she gave us 3 different potential groups of topics. So let's just say, I think one of them was food, one of them was travel, and one of them was something else. And then she gave us 20 potential topics, subtopics of those 3 groups. And she goes, you're going to pick out of a hat. You're going to get at least one of the subgroup or one of the big groups, right? So what I did was I picked one of the larger groups and I wrote out 20 potential speeches, full speeches, and I practiced and memorized 20 speeches.
I knew that was coming. And it's funny though, because I wasn't like that as a studier growing up, but when I got to college, I took speech and I was the exact opposite, even though I have a super rigid personality. One, I had mono, so I just showed up. I was so tired. I was just giving speeches on anything. And I did terrible, but you probably had 20 A+ speeches in you. So what happened when the day came? And this is really basically the first time you're forced to think off the cuff, and you still resisted it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did. You know, if that's not a place in yourself that you haven't tapped into, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to speak off the cuff, because I really just never did, especially in a setting when you have, 50+ eyes on you, and you're presented with that scenario, and it's like, holy shit, I'm going to do it. It's like almost like a survival mode kind of thing. I'm going to do whatever I can to not have to do that. And I reflect back on that, and I don't want to say makes me sad is the right word, but it just shows how fearful I was to speak from my truth. And that's why, in situations like this, our pre-call, this, I try not to prepare as much, because I don't want to have to feel like I'm stuck to a script.
Well, so back at that moment though, what's your biggest worry? Is it self-confidence you won't do it correctly? Or is it you might get a bad grade? Or is it just that you literally don't know what to prepare for? You're so used to studying and remembering, and then it's just like, hey, just tell us something fun. And it's like, I don't know.
I think it's when I don't prepare for something, I get anxious when people are staring at me, because I struggle to release the expectation, like people having expectations for me. And so when I go into a scenario like that, I blank out. My mind, I can't generate anything, because I'm not thinking about the topic at hand and touching into my truth. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these people are staring at me. I don't know what to say. I didn't prepare. And that narrative, it just overruns anything that could organically come up.
Yeah, and that's really the fear of the fear. It's like, oh, well, I hope I don't lock up, and then you're worried about locking up, so you lock up, and you're stuck.
Well, in physiology class, we had to give a 20-minute speech, and our teacher was like, "You're not allowed to memorize. I'm going to know if you memorize, because I can know I know what speech sounds like." So what I did was I memorized a conversational style speech. So I wrote out I wrote out, little
Man.
transitions,
Yeah.
and I memorized it to be conversational, and then I got 100%. And she was like, "That sounded great." And I was like, "You have no idea."
Well, so that actually makes me think of TED Talks, because from what I've learned, I think they're super regimented behind the scenes, and like you have to send them a million, like it has to be perfect. So no matter how hard somebody's trying to be like flippant, it's not. Like
Mm-hmm.
and that to me is so boring. Even though I love so many of them, it's just like I think I would be able to sniff that out. Don't you? Like when you see someone doing an and it's like, no, come on. That's all part of the script. It's part
Yep,
of the
it's
act.
all part of the play.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm very drawn to people that can organically just speak, especially in front of a crowd. Like you said, you can kind of, I don't want to say sniff it out, because like there's some room for preparing things. There are some speeches, you see like 8-10 minutes, it makes sense to prepare, but there's something special about those people that can just light up a room with the way that they, not only the way that they speak, but you can tell that they're hypnotizing themselves,
Yeah,
and then they're hypnotizing the audience.
I mean, part of it is probably confidence, and then the other part is just a healthy dose of I don't give a shit. Because I think we talked about it before. When I was a trial attorney, I would go in with just bullet points, and everyone's like, "Why are you doing that? That's crazy." And I'm like, I did the whole case. Why, I know stuff. Like I'm not going to not have something to say. And then
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like there's plenty of times where I just like it just wasn't working. A juror sneezes or something, and then you just get off track. But I think that's the bad side. It's the part that you were probably trying to resist getting to. Somebody sneezes or gets up or like does something crazy, and it just throws your rhythm off, and then it's lost.
Well, and you know what else it's about too? It's about doing things multiple times. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately. There's a lot of fears I have around speaking, or even getting on a podcast like this, being on the other end, being asked questions, because, you don't always know what's coming. But making mistakes is part of life. And from somebody who like grew up never trying to make a mistake, I'm learning this more and more. You got to do things. You got to just do them. And then you got to put yourself out there. And then the more iterations you do of something, you organically become better at it. It's something I fall into, is because when I'm new at something, I compare myself to the leaders in the space. We were kind of talking about this before. And then I wonder why I'm not just like that, why I can't speak like that, why I can't write like that. And it's not realistic if you're new to something, but there's that disconnect sometimes in my head.
I mean, I don't think it's realistic ever, because I think I'm probably talking about this on a couple of recent podcasts. It's like, even if we get really good at something, there's so many people who are going to be better than us. It literally doesn't matter. It's like, I mean, you're just not going to be the best. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
why would we be? There's so many people. So like, I'm probably not going to be very good at anything. Maybe in my circle of friends, I'm pretty solid, or in a small, grouping of people. But like, I mean, it's just not. There's always going to be somebody better. And even if we don't know somebody better, they're out there, they just are. There are people
Mm-hmm.
everywhere who are going to be smarter than us, better than us, more athletic. It's just, there's
So
no way
damn
around it.
ego.
Yeah, of
Damn
course, of
ego.
course. I
Yeah.
think we want to be better so much, but because everything is so available to us now, the comparison is much easier. When I was younger, there was no internet, so your comparison values are smaller. You can only compare to things that you've seen or known. And that was a few movies here and there, or a book that you've read, but you don't have the access to the information that we have now, where you can compare yourself to anyone, and some of the stuff you don't even know if those certifications or awards are even correct.
Well, and it's not only the access, but it's the access to the information to see other people doing it, but it's how easy anybody can jump onto any platform and now become something. Now, you have to define something. I mean, I don't, there's different grades of it, whether it be like, okay, you have followers, or you're making money, or whatever it is, but anybody can, there's so many opportunities these days that it becomes overwhelming. I mean, you see like these high school kids dropping out of high school because they're making thousands of dollars a month on YouTube. And
Yeah.
it's just, it's a brand new
But
world.
that is the most troubling thing, because the people who do really well, I mean, the highest earner on YouTube was that 7-year-old kid who unboxes toys. Like, I still don't know how that happened. But like for most people who go bananas, like using Twitch and the video game, like those guys make, millions of dollars a year, but they built something. And then it makes us think, makes a lot of kids, maybe I didn't want to do it because the trajectory up takes so long, but it makes people think, you could buy followers. There's really nothing that you can't make appear like you've done more than you have. I mean, it's not that
Yeah.
hard. It's just, what are you getting out of that?
Yeah. I don't think like, for example, creating the channel and becoming successful, the action in itself isn't the problem. It's when people, but especially children, wrap up their self-worth in their channel or in their product, and then the likes become external validation, and then they become determinate, or they become dependent on
Yeah.
that external validation. I think it's great if a child can figure out how to grow a little business or a YouTube channel. That skill is awesome, but as long as a child can keep their self-worth out of it, and I don't think that children or even teenagers or even young adults or anybody for that matter always has the tools to be able to keep those two things separate.
Yeah, no, I mean, adults are probably, with their usage rate, are the highest likelihood to suffer from this, because it's just there. It's like, you can go into, getting a Twitter account or Instagram and say like, oh, I don't care. But then, like, why did they create hashtags? It's, everything is created so you can get more followers and get more seen. So, it's pretty much everybody's goal to get something going, unless you keep your, Facebook friends to 5 if you're on Facebook, and just send stuff to your family, which is really the ideal scenario.
Well, that's why I always laugh when the people are like, I don't care about, if anybody likes my stuff, or I really don't care. But it's like, okay, my brother always says it's great. Why would you post anything then?
Exactly.
Like, why would anybody post anything? If no one really cared, if nobody wanted people to like their stuff or see their stuff or grow a following, then we would all be hermits, sit in our own little rooms, and then just write for ourselves. I mean,
well, that's it exactly. I wrote it in a piece. If you weren't concerned with people seeing it and you didn't want something from it, you would just write in a journal.
mm-hmm.
Like, come on, like, just cut the BS. Like,
I know.
of course we all want something. To say that we don't, like, it's silly. Why would I post it online? If I felt so good about it and it made me internally happy, I would just keep it in a journal,
Mm-hmm.
So even when you say, no, well, I just want to help people. Well, you want to help people and get some pats on the back, because if you want to help people and then somebody says, oh, you're a terrible writer, then you're not going to be happy. You're not. So it's it. It's tough to put yourself out there, but like, we all have to acknowledge, like, we're doing it for a reason. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not.
Well, if you're out there on social media, I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast last night, and they were talking about some people who are they use the term purely artists, but what they meant with that is that these people like sit in their homes and they just paint, and they don't leave, and they don't put their work anywhere. And that's different. But is that the average person? No. So if you're out there on social media, I think it's a lie if you're saying that, oh, this is a completely selfless effort. I mean, you always want to get something out of it.
That's like somebody saying, no, I don't care who sees this, but then why do you have 23 hashtags? Like, there's literally like, there's no point. Like, why are you trying, following 100 people a day in hopes that they follow you? Like, they don't even like you. Like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I always think about social media as like, boy, it was really cool when it started, and now it's like, I hate it so much. I got rid of as much of it as I can. But then for my kids, like, it's interesting to see, because for my kids, they're teenagers and like, they don't use Facebook. Like, I mean, I got off of Facebook. Like, teenagers don't care about Facebook. It's like a bunch of old people now on Facebook. I deleted it like almost a year ago. I don't care at all.
The social media platforms, or really any platform, we were talking about this the other day, it gets annoying because it's one way in the beginning, and you use it, and you become familiar with it, and then all of a sudden there's all these new functions that start coming out, and it becomes overwhelming. At least for me, I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
But you like, Instagram was like, let's post pictures. That's all it was, pictures and something fun. I'm like, this is cool. Then you have IGTV, then you have stories, now you have ads, and then now there's like hashtag. It's just,
well, but the thing with social media is I mean, they obviously had bad intent from the beginning. But if you just look at how the algorithm works now on Instagram, you don't even see people that you like. It's the same on Medium. Like there's too many people. So if, if everybody follows 10,000 people, like, of course you can't see all your friends because they're following too many people. They won't see your stuff. It's all just a mess. Like computer formulas can't keep up with the amount of obsession that we have, on social media to be seen. And yeah, it's impossible. It's I'm hoping to be done with all of them, but for now I'm still left with two. So I
Yeah,
think
so
we strayed far away from your growing up in Hayward.
I know that happens with me. I typically start out and then I just
That's
go
good.
off on a tangent with one story, but I did land on a couple stories I wanted to talk about, that
Yeah.
memorization one in particular, because it just paints a really good picture of even how rigid my mind still can be. I'm trying to work out of it though, work in the
Yeah.
direction of more speaking off the cuff.
Well, it's tough. It's tough, and I know from some stuff that we've been communicating about that maybe part of this, pressing publish is part of that. Like you can't control it. You don't know if it's right. When you study and study and study for a test, like in math, I was really good in math. I used to go in and know I was going to get 100. Like it literally didn't matter in algebra. I was going to get 100. I knew everything. But like, yeah, when you press publish, especially in this type of climate, social climate, like it doesn't matter if you write the best thing ever. Somebody's going to get in there and troll you. So it's like, is my work good? Is it liked? And then does 20 good comments take over the bad comment? And the answer is usually no. Like one bad comment will send us into a spiral much more than the happiness we get from 20 pats on the back.
Oh yeah, no, that I always think about that because I used to write little posts on Instagram, and that's kind of how I started getting into more of my writing. And yeah, I'd get a lot of positive feedback, and then that one troll would stick on my mind like the rest of the day. Would
Yeah.
like almost forget all the positivity. It's
Yeah, I mean,
annoying.
it's part of the new culture. It's very hard to get out of because it does hurt. Like even if we say, oh, you say, I'm the classic, like, oh, I don't give a shit. None of that bothers me. But like everything bothers you in some way. It's just how quickly you're able to get through it. And like if you're having a really bad day, then one really bad comment's really going to hurt that much more. So it's really all dependent on where we are. Some days it's easier to shrug them off, or if it, depending on where it's coming from.
Well, I
So
think it's important. One more thing to add to that. I think it's
yeah.
important to put it in its place because something I deal with, and I wrote a recent piece on this, is that keeping in mind that you could get negative criticism, it hinders me from writing fully onto the paper because
Yeah.
I'm constantly writing with the heat of a critical eye. So it's frustrating to me when I'm writing because I'm already thinking of the potential judgments, and I feel like I'm giving half of myself a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to work through that right now, but it's a process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of our pre-call, we were talking about that, and the one thing I said is like, just if you publish it, you can just delete it tomorrow, and that's how I think about it. Like sometimes I published. I mean, there were so many stories that I published that 6 months later I went back. I was like, this sucks, and I just started deleting them. I didn't feel bad because like they were fine at the time. But no matter what you publish tomorrow, if you look back on it in a year, chances are you won't think it's as good as what you're writing in a year. So
Happens all the time. I even
yeah.
just purge stuff because I'm like, I don't even know what I was thinking writing
Yeah, but
from a year
yeah,
ago.
at the time it's fine. I mean, yeah, but I do think that's hard. I can see where from what you said, it's hard to get to the point where you're feeling that you're an authentic person, but then when you've kind of edited yourself along the way to make it more palatable, then it's hard to say like, yeah, this is the whole me. It's like,
Mhm.
half me.
Yeah, I relate to that so much, and it's 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 interesting to see when for me, I'll write out a paragraph and almost black out when I write it, right? And then I'm like, whoa, I barely need to edit that. That was totally me or my truth or whatever you want to call it. And then other times, I write stuff out and I'm just like, ugh, like I don't know where that came from. It's not me. And I'm like, why can't I tap into that other place more? I
But
wish I
do you
could.
yeah, do you feel like do you feel like you're judging yourself as you write, or are you worried more about how other people are going to judge you, or both?
Probably both. I would say more myself, because you get that sense when you're rereading your work if it's coming from the right place or not. if it's coming to maybe please someone else or impress someone else with how great it sounds, or if it's just your truth.
Yeah. Well, no, that's an interesting topic. And
But
that might be a good transition, because I know that you've done content creation before. And to me, writing stories is much different than creating content. Content is built to create marketing and to get people to click. But when you get into these, the quasi sites, and you start to see like, what are people doing this for? Why am I writing this? And then we get into it because we're thinking like, well, I want the most people to read this. It's how we all get tied up in playing around with our headlines so long, when it's like, give me a break. Like, you have to build the headline, still has to match the story. So do you think that there's a difference there between content and stories, especially with your background? Because you've done content work before. And does that feel easier than when you're trying to write for yourself now?
actually struggle to go. So when you're doing content and you're trying to grow a channel, for example, I have a podcast and I record them. So I put them on YouTube, and I, have them on iTunes and all those other platforms. I started a blog. I started doing kind of spiritual videos on Instagram. I've done kind of a lot of little things, but when you're trying to grow a platform, you have to be, I don't want to say you have to be, but it's encouraged to be kind of salesy. You have a certain intro to your YouTube video. It's like, ask people to subscribe to you, ask people to leave a comment, and all these things that felt very forced. So I definitely went through trying to be that in the beginning of trying to grow my content. And it just felt so far from authentic. And there were so many times I had to check myself where I would be doing things for a couple weeks, let's say, and then I'd be like, whoa, this is not authentic. It doesn't feel right to me. And I'd constantly have to check myself. So I wouldn't even necessarily say that making the content and writing for myself, they're any different, because I'm always trying to be authentic in whatever I do. I really try not to fall into that, like, give me a follow, give me a like. I do it sometimes, but
a lot of creatives work in content for businesses also. And you've done that too, right? Did you do that for a cannabis company?
I actually, for a hemp company, I started out doing the marketing. I don't really lead that right now, but I dip my toes in it. Yes.
Yeah. So like, if I think back of how I wrote things when I was in real estate, of course they were, we were trying to sell stuff. So it's very hard to transition between the two, but then I see it in creative realms where it's like, well, when you get to, it's like calls to action. Calls to action are a great thing when you're trying to sell something. But like, if I'm reading a story and I really love it, and I get to the bottom and there's a call to action for an ebook, then I immediately hate it. It's just like this thing where it's just like, oh, well, that wasn't even valid. Like they're wanting something else from me along the way. But then there's all this other stuff out there that's telling us, oh, if you want to get famous as a writer, plug yourself all over every single platform and make sure that you get a mailing list and all this. So we're in the middle sitting there like, what the hell do we do? Like, I don't know what to do. Do I ask for something, or do I just let it go? And I've transitioned to just letting it go, but I don't think it's easy. So,
well, it's hard, because then when you let it go, everybody else around you is not letting it go because they're asking for stuff. And then you got to think, well, are they getting stuff because they're asking for it? Should I be doing that too? Because
and then if they get the stuff though, is it really valid? It's like, our followers really valid? Like, just because we have 10,000 followers doesn't mean 10,000 people care about us. They click the button, they may just never even feel like cleaning up. Like, people don't declutter their following all the time. I do, but like, that's not on everybody's radar to be like, oh, I really don't listen to them. A lot of people follow. They're not never going to look at anything that you post. So I think it's all mixed up in this, the dynamic of the internet and how we get ourselves through it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see why people have this deep desire to have followers. I mean, I definitely went through that. I have a lot of followers right now, but it's very interesting. My Instagram changed from many different things. Like, I think I told you I started an edibles company.
Right.
Back when I probably got about like 2,000 people or so that followed me from that, just because I was posting edible cakes, and it's like, who doesn't like it's like edible cakes? Oh my gosh, like everybody just loved the edible cakes. And then I went into a personal page, then I went into doing memes, and then I went into doing videos, and now I'm doing more writing and more of my content. So I've have this very diverse group of followers that it's just not a targeted base of people. So it's really interesting to I post stuff, and then it's like sometimes I get like random trolls that I'm like, oh gosh, like where did you even come from? But I'm like, oh, probably like years ago when I
3
was
iterations ago. Yeah.
And so it's weird because I don't think that everybody's necessarily like a fan of mine, or it's like I don't even think people necessarily know who I am or what they're, because it's like you follow somebody and then you forget or whatever. But
and then maybe they followed you in the edible phase and now they don't care about writing, and that's fair. Totally
exactly
fair.
It is fair, but there's this desire for having followers, and I wouldn't say it's across the board, but I see people all the time, even people I know, just buying 5,000 followers at a time.
That is literally makes no sense to me, because then it's obviously just a vanity metric, because they're not real people. You're buying bot farms, so like what's the point? Maybe they click that they like, but like because it's a bot farm.
Well, you're literally creating your own external validation.
Yeah,
like
right.
you are buying yourself likes, like you're buying yourself little dopamine spikes.
That's just weird. No one will, not enough people like me that I'm satisfied with. So I'm just going to pay people to do it. It's just basically paying people to come to your birthday party. That just seems silly.
Well, then you get into the brand influencer world. And I could see why some people would do it, because their business is a brand influencer, right? So then the way they sell themselves is, I get 2,000 likes on each photo. And so then they want to promote a product, because then that product will get the exposure. But then when you really look at the entire cycle, you take a step back, it's what are you doing that for?
Yeah, if the likes aren't going through to the call to action, then who cares? It's like they're missing the life cycle of a real person. I don't know that it's not going to be able to be worked out. We're way too deep in the garbage dump of the internet to be able to pull out of it. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, and when you start something new, like when you decide like, hey, no, now I really want to be a writer, that's the time where we're most vulnerable to the things like everybody's saying, here's an e-course, how to be a better writer, or here's a class on how to do this better. And like, we're vulnerable. So we may check some of that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the information isn't good, because it's just how to get rich quick, basically. And
and you got to look at the bio of, I don't want to put too much emphasis on the bio of people, because a bio isn't necessarily, the end all, but it's like, who's writing a book on how to write better? Do they actually know how to write better? I mean, what have they done?
That is literally like the internet. I mean, it's internet writing. It's like, I was just joking with someone, because I saw like 25, 100 life lessons. And then I looked and the person was like 24. So how the hell do you have 100 life lessons? You're 24. You're just replicating what, you can't. Like, it's just a thing. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. And then there's always someone who say, no, I've done a lot. Okay, that's fine. But there's things that just don't make sense. I like you, I always look to the background, because I want to know, if you say like, I can make you successful in doing this, then show me all the things. Don't show me like once I got, 200 likes. Great. Good job.
Well, that's why you got to look at the big personalities in, for example, big, like Gary Vee is one that comes up. I used to love what he posted, but now I'm starting to rethink a lot of what he says, because, he's motivational. He encourages people. He wants people to, do you know who Gary Vee is?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He wants people to,
Does anyone not?
Find their happiness. But then you see some of his messages and it's like, just put content out there. Just do it. Just post something today. I post 4 times a day and this is what everybody should be doing. And it's like, hold on, like, what about creating the space to find yourself first,
right,
before you start pushing shit out there? And I feel like there's a lot of younger people, especially right now, that just want to be famous and they just want internet fame, and they're sacrificing their own truth and themselves to try to be famous on the internet. And I guess I'm just judging there, but it's like, I just don't see how that's going to lead to anything fulfilling.
No, and I mean, even if you become internet famous, you can be internet unfamous the next day. That's the hardest point. So even if you say like, there's so many people who've made millions of dollars and then been broke the next year. So it's not like money is the end all to happiness. We all know that. So it's like, what is really making people happy. And it's not the numbers of followers aren't like, if you go home to your, $12 million mansion every night by yourself and no one calls you and nobody texts you, but all you have is, fake friends on the internet. I just, maybe it works for some people, but I don't think that's can't be a long-term, gain for anybody. And I do
No.
think you're right. I mean, like, kids are growing up in a different time now where that becomes something like valid. And there are super ways to make money by doing things that couldn't be done before. But I still think they operate in this sphere where it's definitely very dangerous if you're counting on that. The same way that if you're counting on money from any website, it could just close tomorrow. We don't
Mhm.
control what we don't own. So there's no guarantees out there that anything's going to keep rolling along the way that it was if we don't own it.
Well, and then not to mention on top of that, just how our ability to connect and really connect with other people is just dwindling down so
So
rapidly with
much.
being behind screens all day. And you and I were talking about this, simply having the face-to-face calls like this is so valuable because you like see another person and you hear their voice and you get to talk to them. It
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we did. This is something good to talk about, because I think, like, for introverts or for people who don't, just generally go out much, work from home, like I felt like I was too attached to texting and all this other stuff. And because I'm introverted, it was just like, well, it's fine. And then I just was like, I tried this type of thing with people who I didn't know as well, like people, I met on Medium or somewhere. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, the conversations itself are great, but seeing somebody's face is just so much different. Like, we just live in this society today where everything is misconstrued if it's just written or texted. Like, there's no tone, there's no nuance, there's no way that I move my hand when I talk. Like, you can't get anything from a sentence, and it's so overly judgy all the time. So for me, this is great for somebody personally like myself who does not spend a ton of time outside of the house, but also I feel like, just from our conversation the other day, like, I was like, oh, like, we're friends, like, we're definitely going to be friends, because you can see something when you talk to someone and you see how they react. And it's a much different story. And, I don't know, like, kids spend a lot more, I would say they spend a lot of time in their rooms now. However, they're also spending a lot of time doing this with FaceTime. And that's why, like, at least for, like, my daughter, I'm okay with that. She does stuff, but I also know, like, she's talking to her friends in there. And, like, when I was a kid, I was talking on the phone. That was at least social. So this
Mhm.
just brings it up another level where you can actually see people instead of, leaving open the possibility for catfish friends or things that you don't know. I always want to know who's on the other end at some point.
Absolutely. And I think it's great to have this because it's a nice middle ground for people like you or myself who we don't really leave the house much. We were talking about it last time, the chaotic nature of just crowds and traffic and being out there and noise and just I think what the overarching theme is unpredictability, just chaos everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a lot for me. And I used to shame myself all the time because I thought, well, everybody else can be out there and I should be able to be out here and be social and go to happy hours and everything. But my husband brought up a good point the other day. He said, you go out there and you see what you see, but can you imagine think about how much of society is actually hidden? We don't factor that in. How many people are in their homes? How many people have chronic illnesses? How many
You're frozen, by the way. So I'm waiting for it to come back. All right, we're back. That was my internet's been super weird. Can you hear me?
Hey,
Can you hear me?
I can. I don't know
Okay.
what happened.
Yeah, my internet's been super weird. I don't know. You've been freezing during our conversation, like off and on, but like in 5 seconds, it usually comes back. That one just did not. So
Oh, weird.
I think that the Zoom, it's still on record. I think it's still recording the whole stream. So we should be
Oh,
fine. They'll cut out
cool.
any me going like, "Are you there? Are you there?"
I see. Well, what I was just saying, I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but my husband brought up a good point the other day about how much of society is hidden. So I used to shame myself a lot for going out there and not being able to hang, with the extroverts that like to go out and party all night and be around lots of people and noise. But he told me, he said, think about how much of society is actually hidden. How
Right.
many people are in their homes, how many people have chronic illnesses, how much of society do we not see? So what you do see out there is not a whole picture of the entire population. It's an illusion, it's a portion.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, that's really interesting, because it's only a small group of people that I've been comparing myself to. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. And this helps though, because then I like to connect with an introvert community is something that's great for me. And it's very important for people with chronic illnesses who don't have like illnesses that people know what they mean, but like you can't leave the house all the time. Like you're tired, those things, like they can develop businesses through this. And like we as introverts or just people who don't enjoy crowds or being out or partying can somehow start to build this. But I still, it's still harder, but it's a good point that your husband made, because there is so much else we don't know about. And when we're out, all we see is, everybody who likes to be out. It's
Mhm.
like that's not the comparison, because there's tons of other people who are on their couch watching Netflix and enjoying themselves.
Well, I always joke that, I kind of briefly touched upon this in our pre-call about how I don't feel like I have a lot of friends, because a lot of my friendships that I had have been in this new period of transformation, and a lot of them dropped off. And I always tell my husband, I'm like, where are my friends? Like, I don't have friends. And he's like, they're all doing what you're doing. They're in their houses. So, you just got to find how to connect with people that are in their houses.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
we go. Just like this.
Yeah, hey, I'm here. Yeah, no, but it does, because I mean, there's so many more people now who work from home, but like that work from home thing is like there's so many layers to it, because if you say you work from home, then people just assume you're unemployed, or you do nothing or just watch Netflix all day, which occasionally I do, which is fine. That's the perk of working from home. But it's still like, yeah, you don't have a built-in community. It's why the co-working spaces are so popular, but like they sound terrible to me too. I don't want to be around other people.
I'm actually writing a piece right now on when I was in the workplace, and oh gosh, I'll save the suspense for my
Yeah.
piece, but like it is a whole different ball game out there. I can't do the politics. It drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I why I've left every job is just bureaucracy, and it's why I leave just even small organizations, because I just don't like it. I don't like all the rules and everything, and yeah, just the kind of political mess that is involved in just like little things like homeowners associations. Everything has its own
Mhm.
little, political issues, and it's, I just rather not.
Well, my friend Grace, she's really into self-expression and art, and she actually shaved her head because she's like, you know what, she wanted to do something different for herself. She felt very empowered. She shaved her head. She had this long blonde hair, and she got a complaint from HR when she worked at her company because she shaved her head.
What would that a
I
possible
I
complaint be?
don't know what the details were, and she told me a high level of the story, but she the place she worked had a lot of specific stuff, like you could only wear, you couldn't show above the knee anything, you couldn't, you had to wear a certain type of shoe,
That's
um,
weird.
all that stuff, and I could not, I can't, because the more you just think about that, it's like, what is the goal? What is the goal there? It's like, so okay, you can't wear anything, above the knee. Why?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's like, what environment are you trying to create? Just strange world out there.
Yeah, I mean that goes well. There was one thing I wanted to touch on from the this kind of online thing. So, as a female in this society, with all the misogyny that's out here, does connecting with somebody who's opposite sex, does this feel more safe? Like even for me, I feel safer when I first connect like this, just because like, you may think you know somebody on the internet, but like there's a lot of, you don't know what you're getting. It's like internet dating. You're not sure until you show up. But like to me, sure, somebody could be completely an imbecile over, Skype or Zoom, but it's
Mhm.
safe. It's just that. Like you just don't ever have to have contact with them again.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, meeting anybody, regardless if they're, like a male or a female over the internet first would certainly feel more safe. For me personally, I'm still trying to dive into this. I've always felt more comfortable with men,
Mm.
meeting men than women. I'm not totally sure why. I have some theories, but uh, generally, even in person, I feel more confident with men. So it's kind of opposite of what you probably hear from a lot of women these days. But that's just kind of how I've always been.
Yeah.
My husband's ex law enforcement, so he's definitely kind of ingrained like the don't trust anyone mentality into me a bit, just
Yeah.
because of all the shit he saw working in the jail.
Yeah.
So I always bring that even to these kind of interactions. I read people quite easily, and I try to get you can get that sense. You were talking
Yeah.
about that when you talk to somebody, you can kind of get a sense of like, okay, this person's either kind of weird or I can just jam with this person like you and
Yeah.
I.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say definitely like I love this.
Yeah. Me
I
too.
don't do this a lot. You kind of introduced this to me, and I've done it with my podcast, but not on a relationship base, not to just talk, you know, with a friend. And
Yeah.
I think I want to do this more. This is cool.
Yeah, I'll be here for you. I just started like a few months ago, really like just doing it like weekly because I have a lot of friends who live out of the country, and it like used to be where like I just wouldn't talk to them. I'm like, we can just Skype or Zoom, like, and it's great. Sometimes we're just sitting there, shooting the shit for like an hour, and it's like, when I was a kid, that would have cost like $500. Now we can see each other and like enjoy there's some friends like I've only met like a couple times, so just to follow up, or even if I haven't met, it's just nice to see the face and kind of get a rhythm of a conversation. And I personally detest the phone. I literally don't answer any of my phones ever. Never.
Really? Why is that?
No, just do not. I don't ever like to hold a cell phone to my head. And I just don't enjoy talking on the phone because I feel like I'm always doing something else. Like I don't know what it is. I just do not like being on the phone. So I always do something else. But like if I'm on this, there's nothing else to do.
Well, I was just going to actually comment on that. So the phone is very intrusive, and I will agree with you on that, because the fact that someone can just call you and interrupt what you're doing, and then there's the
Right.
expectation to answer, it's so intrusive.
Yeah.
My right now for my job, my company line is directed to my cell phone. So sometimes it drives me crazy because
Yeah.
there's just calls, all different time zones coming in all the time. But it forces you to be mindful because you
Yeah.
schedule something with someone, you block out a certain amount of time, and then you're present with them, not sitting here like, oh, I'm going to text, I'm going to write this, I'm
Yeah,
going to.
it's a good point though. The schedule is very important to me. So if somebody schedules a phone call, like that's fine. Personally, I'd still rather do it on Skype or Zoom because I'm always at my computer and I just rather see somebody. Like I just really don't like. I don't like having my headphones. Like I don't like it. I really, but yeah, I like the schedule aspect of it too because then I've allotted my time. So like, especially if you're a creative or you work from home, like I'm balancing out what I want to do. So if 11 to 12 that day is going to be really good and like somebody just keeps calling me, like that's annoying. Like I got out of real estate. One of the main reasons was my phone literally never stopped ringing. It would start ringing at 5 and it would stop ringing at like 11 at night, and my message said do not call me, just text me, and I would respond to text, and it still says that. But it's like but then texts became overwhelming. I wrote something about text not that long ago where it's just like the expectation of return text is just so out of like bananas now. Like I can't text you right back. I'm like hanging out with my kid. I don't care that you need the answer to an important question about, which pants do I think are better in the winter. I literally don't care. But it's like you get into this. So like, especially this happens a lot in relationships, but I think in close friendships too, like you're just like want somebody to respond and like forget like somebody may be going to the bathroom. They could be in a movie. It's like, stop, repeat texting, or like how robocallers just call and then they call again. There's so many blocked phone numbers on my phone. I probably have set the record.
It's because everybody, the stage is set up to respond immediately. Like even in my job, you know, sometimes customers will email me requests and it's like a couple hours later, it's like, oh, I was just following up to make sure you got my email. Like, yo, it's been 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I have it, like I'm busy. Like, you know, like I just, it's this instant expectation to get a response back. And then another thing with the messages in the phone, you don't know what the conversation is going to be like. What if you're in a creative space?
Exactly.
What if you're just rolling, you're flowing, and then all of a sudden someone's like pissed off at you and just fucks you up? It's
Yeah.
like that's not cool. And so
But
that's why
that
it's
happens all the time in email and notifications too. It's like, oh, look, I got a new notification on my story. And then you read it, it's like, you're fucking stupid. And you're like, oh, now
I
my
know
day's ruined. You know,
that
like,
that happened almost word for word what you just said to me yesterday. I was sitting there on Instagram. I'm like, oh, I got a comment, and then it was on my recent one, and it was like, you're fucking retarded. And I was like, wow, like what
yeah.
a waste of my time and energy to stop what I was doing and read that bullshit.
Yeah. Like, yeah, but that is the dings and beeps culture that just is making us all crazy. I mean, it really is. It drives me nuts. And I as much as I see, like, I've tried to turn off as many notifications as possible. Like if I didn't have kids, I'm not sure I would have a phone. I really don't care. I don't want it. I can do whatever I need to over the internet, and then I can just not be online. You know,
Mm-hmm.
even if I am online, I can just hide. You know,
What I've done to help me is I turn off all the notifications. So I don't get the little numbers on my apps. I used to, but it
oh
was
yeah,
just
yeah.
so overwhelming, especially when it notifies you. It's like Instagram, like so it's like when the pop-ups come, that just
Oh
freaks
yeah,
me
yeah,
out. It
yeah.
freaks me
I
out. So
know.
I leave that off. So that helps a little bit, but then you still get the impulse. Like, have you ever, I mean, maybe you don't do this as much because you're not on there, but it's like sometimes I'll be on Instagram and then I close the damn thing and then I just fucking reopen it right back.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like,
No,
why did I just do that?
I still have Instagram. All I have is Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, I'll do that. It's like a boredom thing too, and it's just like, I think that we all have become twitchy, like really twitchy, like in terms of like, oh, I sit down, so then I pull out my phone. Like I'm waiting for 1 second. So I started when I take walks, I still bring my phone, but I don't look at it. I bring it in case my kids call me, and I stopped even bringing headphones because I was like, if I have headphones, then I'll hear a beep or a buzz. So I just go, and the only thing I would use it for is to take pictures, and I don't look at it. And that actually has been pretty freeing. I'd like to start taking walks without my phone, which my kids are old. Like I really don't need my phone, but it's just that like I just want to be reachable in case of
Yeah.
a fire or something. But yeah, I was reading Digital Minimalism, and Cal Newport was saying like just take a walk and leave your phone at home. And it's like almost all of us to a T are just like, I can't do that. What if something important happens? Like we're not that important.
I know. And especially in
Nothing.
like 30 minutes too, right? Even if you're going for like a smaller walk, it's like, what if this 30-minute window in my day, nothing else happens around it? What
Right.
if
But
30-minute
like,
window?
who the hell are we? What am I, Jeff Bezos, and I have $1 million deal coming in? I'm just
I
like some
know.
guy who writes on the internet and does a podcast. Like, it's just like nothing in my life matters really in that realm. So like, I'm pretty sure I'm good if I go on a 2-hour walk. You know, like,
Well, I think getting away from the notifications and the impulses, it's a great balance because I'm one of the people that started going on a walk without her phone recently.
yeah,
The other day we went on about a 4-mile walk. We were gone for a while, and oh, it was like the distancing from all of the notifications, the impulses to check, the emails made them better when I came back because you get a break, you get a gap, you get like a mind reset and a clearing, and then you can come back and you actually like look forward like, oh, let me check my platforms, let me see what's going on in Slack.
it's so funny when I get back and I haven't done it. I like don't want to do it at all.
Oh,
Like
really?
maybe I'm like at like like the next level of that, because it's like when I'm away from it, I get back and I'm like, I like it that way. So I get back and it's like I'm like challenging myself. How long can I take before I check? I really want to
Yeah.
see, like, am I really going to get twitchy about it? I mean, I think I'm going to delete the apps off my phone so I just don't look at my phone and I only look on the desktop, and I think that will help me. I mean, I'm at my desktop pretty much all the time, but I also am very regimented about what I'm doing. So I don't, I look at Twitter, on my desktop, but I think if I look at Instagram on my desktop, it's better. I don't think there's ads that way, but
Yeah, I think it has to do with your energy too. Sometimes, like what you said, you want to stay off. If my energy's low and I'm feeling icky, sometimes if I even pick up my phone and start to check, I'm just like, oh, like I just can't even do that right now. Like I need a mind break, you
Yeah.
know? So like there are certainly those times where I'm just like, oh, like you feel, and this happens when I smoke cannabis. When I smoke cannabis, like it's almost like I feel the EMF. Like I'm looking at the screen and I'm just feeling the phone and I'm like, this is not human.
Yeah.
It's not.
Sometimes I think that it even goes the other way. It's like the pacifier. We feel bad, so we go on to vent. And then like when you vent, somebody invariably is like, shut up. And then you're like, oh, this didn't work out. You know, now I'm like off social media. There's really nothing good from it. All the good things that used to come from it, like, oh, you can connect with your family. And like, it's like none of that. That's not why I go through my Instagram every day and just delete more people. And I feel like some of my like, you know, people I wasn't even friends with in high school are going to be like, oh man, why'd you delete me? I'm like, I don't want to look on Instagram. Like I want to look at like photography. So there's not much there that I want to see. So I struggle with like, you know, wondering if people are like going to get mad at me or something. But then I also would rather have a clean screen.
Yeah, it can be good in my opinion if you use it for a specific purpose. You know,
Oh
it's like if
yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
reach people, if you want to grow your business, but the struggle is being able to keep that consistent purpose in front of you and not get distracted from it. And I think a lot of people get distracted and it's like, oh wow, likes, and oh, maybe I can do this. And it just, I've seen it happen to myself and others where it can just start to spiral out really
Oh
fast.
yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
I was starting out to write in the beginning on there, I felt like I was writing when I wanted to. I'd post something when I felt like it. And then all of a sudden I was getting more followers and more likes and stuff. And then I felt obligated to put out content. And then I was pushing out stuff as opposed to letting it organically flow. And then I
Yeah.
was like, that this is not working. I just don't feel good doing this.
Yeah. I recently kind of reset my Instagram for what I wanted to do with it. And now I find like so much more enjoyable. I read this book by Sarah Tasker, who has a podcast, and the book is called #Authentic. And I just was like obsessed. I was like, now I actually like Instagram again because I'm just trying to post photos of things that I like. Like I'm actually trying to take photographs instead of like, hey, you know, here's me sitting on a stoop with my dog. Like, who gives a nobody gives a shit about that. And like,
You
I don't,
probably like Neil deGrasse Tyson's. Do you follow Neil deGrasse Tyson, his
no,
Instagram?
no,
Oh,
but I will. Yeah.
he takes pictures, and he's such an intelligent person that he takes pictures and he analyzes them in such an artistic and scientific way. It's similar to kind of what you do with your pictures, and you kind of have a little analysis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd like his stuff.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I do. I tend to follow a lot of like just beautiful photography, and then I end up not reading. But there are times where I'd like a little snippet. I like a little snippet once in a while. But yeah, we're going as we thought we would. We're almost at an hour. So let's flip ourselves over to where you are now, and now you're really beginning to write creatively again. And what's this process been like? We talked about it a little bit before about, you know, the inability to hit publish without like over editing yourself. So how's it going so far, and what are you trying to get out of it?
Well, it's kind of a serendipitous event how I landed upon Medium, even because for people, maybe most people know John Gorman. You know John Gorman. He
Yep.
actually was following me on Instagram for my podcast stuff, because I have the Thought Project podcast. I started that earlier this year, and I just to rewind a little bit, the podcast can lead into the writing. So I started doing the podcast because, well, my whole life people have told me, you know, you got to communicate in some way. It's like you have a gift for communicating. I hear that so much, and I feel that to be true in myself. The way I will communicate, I'm not sure whether that be speaking, writing, maybe a combination, but I started the podcast just as a way to practice my speech. You know, I'm not going to lie and say that part of me had that inkling of wanting to be famous and get famous. And I love Joe Rogan. So it's like, if I have a gift for communicating, maybe I'm going to blow up. And that was certainly.
But it's the same thing. Like I have two podcasts. I like them, but like I would have to be kidding myself if I didn't sit around and think like, I used to think like, oh, well, I sent in my dad podcast to Gimlet. I'm like, yeah, of course we all want to be famous. Like
yeah.
It's just, I like doing what we're doing, but like, yeah, like if 1 million people listen, that would be cool.
Exactly. Right. So you can't lie and say that isn't underlying. And I appreciate that you're transparent and authentic with that, because I still have a lot of shame in admitting that, because it's like, oh gosh, you're not doing something authentically. Like it's a weird thing. But I started the podcast and it was great. I have a long form conversation. I can't shut up. So my podcasts are like two to 2.5 hours.
That's
Like
Joe Rogan philosophy, though. No, and even like armchair expert Dax Shepard, like they're long, but I listen
yeah,
to every single one.
yeah,
I listen to it on speed and a half, but still.
yeah.
Yes.
So I started doing that, and just as it went along, I still do episodes from time to time. But I, like anything, I kind of burnt myself out because I went really hard in the beginning. I did, like 2 a week, and with the editing, and I do video too. So it just got really overwhelming and I felt myself getting burnt out. So I kind of took a step back and reevaluated myself, reevaluated the podcast. And what I came up with was that my mind still felt very congested. And I didn't really know what that meant. But I wanted to organize my mind, and it wasn't happening through the podcast in the way that I thought it would happen. And, my husband's reading Stephen King, and we talked about that, and he's all into writing, and you got to write to, Jordan Peterson, all this stuff. You got to write to organize your mind. Like everybody, like it's such a powerful tool. And he's been saying that for months. And I'm like, I'm going to think about writing again, because I started a blog years ago, but I never really saw it through. And then at the same time, John Gorman reached out to me about my podcast. He introduced himself. He introduced me to Medium. I found the platform. I was like, this is cool. I kind of just read their mission, didn't really know anything else about them. We've
Yeah.
had some conversations about
Yeah,
them.
of course.
But I was like, this is a really cool platform, and let me tap into my creativity again. And it's been a really great experience, because I feel like it's exposing a lot within me. I write. I don't have a sound process yet. I'm still all over the place. I have a lot of drafts in my stories. I kind of, I half write something, and then I'm like, I kind of lose my direction. Sometimes I write something all the way through. It just all depends. But what I'm really using writing for now, and what I hope to get out of it, is just organizing my mind, trying to figure out what the hell's going on in here and let this shit out, because there's so much going on.
Yeah. Well, that we talked about that the other day. I mean, part of the writing process, especially when you use a site like this and you can just kind of leave your drafts, it's like you don't even have to publish everything. It's like a journal. It's just like, I don't like handwriting because I write so little. My hand hurts after like 2 minutes, but I just feel like, yeah, you get out the verbal diarrhea and you get it into someplace, and then you decide, is it worth publishing? But even if not, like we talked about the other day, you've cleared it out of your mind. So the more things that I've written about that were serious to me or that happened to me over my life, and then when I kind of purged them out of my mind, it opened up all the space for all the new ideas to come in. And I was shocked at the amount of ideas that started coming in after I kept publishing out and kind of getting rid of the ideas, even if they were terrible. It's like I still got it out. I got it out and then I deleted it, but I don't have to go back to it. It's gone. And now there's all this room to come back to the ideas.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because for the longest time, a pivotal moment in my life was the fainting experience. I wrote about it on Medium. But for the longest time, I felt so stuck as a victim, and I still am to some degree, but I just, that story was on repeat. It's like whenever I would meet people, it's like, oh, tell me about your life. That story came up. It just came up, and it's almost like I couldn't have a conversation with a new person without introducing the fact that, oh gosh, I fainted, went through this existential period, changed I couldn't let it go. And something I've been observing myself in it's been maybe about a week since I wrote it, but that story isn't as stuck anymore up here.
Yeah,
because I let it out, and I don't feel this impulse to just share it with everybody, because I let it out and put it out there.
Yeah. And I think that, it goes back to where we've been a lot of this conversation. It's like, what are we expecting from it? Because if you let it out and then you expect like, oh, I want people to read this for it to be, successful, then it's not going to leave your head. Then the new narrative is going to be in your head of like, why didn't more people read this? But if you just think like, I need to get this stuff out, some of it I'll publish, some I'll publish and delete, some I'll never publish, then you're just letting your mind be free. And that's good that it's actually creating that space. It may not be perfect, but I think like for me, the more I did it, the more space that kept opening up in my head, and I would just be logging ideas. And then like we all say, yeah, you need to pile up a lot of drafts because some stuff's just stupid that we write. You just write it and you're like, wrote it in a bad attitude. I do that all the time. Like,
Oh yeah, like a vent or something.
and then I'm like, I'm gonna take a look at this, or I send it to a friend. It's why we have the feedback channel in Slack. I just need somebody to be like, no, you need to take out that shit. That's you're over the line. And then
No, I told you about that piece I wrote. It was on when I was still kind of recovering from my food addiction, and it was all about, how no one should eat sugar and no one should eat this, and this system is fucked up. And I was just pissed off, and I sent it to my friend, and he's like, damn, I feel like you're punishing me right now when I'm reading this. Like, you should probably restructure the tone.
We talked about this. That's a good friend. I want honesty in response to anything. Like, I'd much rather have my feelings hurt for a short time and then it will go away and I'll be like, well, they told it to me straight, like that's what I want. And I think that not enough people want that. They just want the glossy. It's like when somebody asks you, like, does this look good on me? And you say, well, not
not really.
Not my favorite. I mean, it's not my favorite. And then it's like, why didn't you just tell me it looked good? Well, I don't know. I just assume you're like, I don't know. Like, that's where it becomes like glitchy for me because I don't have a non-truth filter. And I was just reading something on Medium about like, how to be more tactful. And I don't like wasting time. So I just want the truth. Like, just give it to me. Like, you hate me, go for it. Just tell me. I can just shake. I'm out. Okay, great. No problem. Like that. I just don't want to waste any extra time in my life. So if I got that
That's
comment
awesome.
from a friend, I would appreciate that. I mean, at the time you did appreciate it, right? Even if it was like, yeah, because then it's a wake up call.
I appreciated it more than all the other people that, just said, oh, it's great.
Yeah, well, because they didn't read it. We talked about that too. Anybody, you send somebody like a 9-minute read and they're like, I liked it. Oh, all right.
I know.
Thanks a lot.
See, that's something my husband's been going through. I don't want to give the details of the scenario, but it's interesting when you send somebody something, either you've written it or something like deep concepts where it's like, hey, I thought of you when I saw this video. Let me explain my thoughts. Like, what do you think? And it's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah. That's just an indicator that they didn't read it. I mean, I know that enough by now. And I think it's usually in our friend realm because they're not, used to reading or they have other stuff going on. So I stopped right away thinking that my friends would ever read anything that I wrote, because they probably don't look at me like that. So they don't know what I'm going to write. If I write about them, I'll send it to them and then they'll read it. But other than that, they could give a shit.
Yeah, no, it's good that you have that truth filter. For me, I still have a choice. So like I told you, I've been like, my family's very much like kind of people pleasy. I've been kind of going through a period where I realized I sacrificed kind of my own thoughts to please the other person. So, I mean, it must be refreshing to have that kind of, it doesn't sound like you really have a choice in your head of like, should I say this? Should I not? It's just like, this is what it is. And for me, a thought will still come up where I'm like, this could be a little sticky and I could offend somebody, but do I want to say this or do I not?
I think some people wish I had that because I mean, I think that sometimes it comes across as arrogance or too much, but I know inside it's not. I just I don't know how to not just tell the truth. So yeah, sure. Sometimes it comes off as a little short, but that's me. Because that's how I want it. So it's not hypocritical for me to say like, well, if you have something bad to tell me, like, beat around the bush for a half hour. I don't want that. Like cut to the chase. Tell me something bad that you think about me. Let me deal with it. And that's how I give it, because all relationships of all kinds are mostly not going to last forever. So if someone's going to get super offended over, something that I believe to be the truth or that is, the truth, then that's fine. It's like, it's okay. It's fine.
No, beating around the bush. I have a funny story, a quick story with that. We let my brother borrow our juicer, and my husband's very particular with his things. He takes very good care of his things. He like cleans he is just, from the way he grew up, like he didn't really have a lot of friends.
Even the juicer, can he come and clean my juicer? I don't use it enough because I hate cleaning it. It's so annoying.
No, he's a freak when it comes to that. So my brother's always a little apprehensive borrowing our stuff because he doesn't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Well, the other night, you know, we let him borrow it, no problem. And then it's like, okay, so I wake up the next morning and I get a text from him early in the morning, like 6 in the morning. And he's like, call me when you get up. And I'm like, oh shit. And I'm not thinking about the juicer at this time, right? Because it's like, I'm thinking something catastrophic has happened. So then I wake up at 6:15. I look at it. I'm like, fuck, I got to call him. And then I call him, and then he's like, he answers the phone. I have some bad news.
Oh, God.
In that tone. And I'm just like, Joe, what the fuck? Like, just tell me what the fuck it is, right? And then he goes, well, I don't know if you're going to think it's as bad as it is. I'm like, Joe, tell me what the fuck it is. And he goes, I chipped the juicer. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it is not that big of a deal. You should have just texted me first.
Did anyone die?
Before this whole saga, just telling me about the juicer.
Yeah.
And then we ended up laughing, but he thought, you know, we were going to be upset and all this stuff. And I just think about it. It's like beating around the bush. It was like, I thought somebody died.
Yeah. Well, if you just think of the minutes that we have on Earth, you know, to finish in an existential way, it's just like, why do I want to waste time? Just like, it's like, so I also talk straight. So I would just like say something and someone say, well, what you really mean is this. I was like, oh my God, no, I literally mean the words that came out of my mouth. There's no hidden meaning. I'm not trying to sneak something in the back end. I would just say it. And that becomes like a frustrating dialogue for me too, because I just want to say it. It's like, you know, people online will read a quarter of your article and then comment on it. And it's like, you didn't even, you're asking me, you're saying things about it. You didn't even finish it. Just finish.
Oh, I love when people.
Story.
I love when people comment on a thought that you've already addressed later.
Yeah,
but like you said, they don't read it, and so
that's the internet.
It's like let me comment to you with one sentence telling you to just read it again because you clearly missed something.
Yeah. I just copy and paste it in there, or just at this point in my life, I've blocked so many people I can't even keep up, and everybody thinks that's so weird. And I'm like, it's just a self thing. Like, why, if somebody's annoying me, why wouldn't I block them? I don't want to see anything that they have to say. It's just easier for me in a mental health way. I just don't want it. You know, it's like when you break up with someone, I block everything because I don't want to see what they're doing. Like, I don't want to see like the next week that they're on Instagram with somebody else. Like, that's not good for me. So why do I want to, you know, keep that around? All right. So we've gone a little over. We may have to do this again since we have so much fun, or I will come to you and we'll do it on your podcast. But I appreciate the time. I'm sure we actually hit a lot of good issues in our talk fest. We're good at this.
I know. We should definitely do another episode, and I want to have you on my podcast too.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, we'll coordinate that.
Tell us, it's Thought Project, and how do you find it? If you're searching in like Apple Podcasts, will it come up with Thought Project, or do you need to type in your name also?
Nope, it'll come up with Thought Project. The whole name is Thought Project with Ashley Rothstein. Right. So I think if you just search my name, you'd probably find it too.
Yeah.
You can also find you can also find it on YouTube, just under Ashley Rothstein, and then I have my own little playlist because I do other videos on YouTube too.
Yeah, I grabbed that link. So any other links, send them over, and we will link to them in the show notes, to the podcast, to your Medium profile, your Instagram, and all the other stuff that's out there.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jonathan. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. That was Ashley Rothstein, and I'm Jonathan Greene. And this has been Assemblage, the podcast.